on Oshkosh Media. This event is being simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Recordings can be found on the Oshkosh Media YouTube page, and replay schedules for government TV can be found on oshkoshmedia.org. I'm Margie Davey, President of the League, and tonight's moderator. The League of Women Voters seeks to inform citizens about major public policy issues and about candidates seeking office. We never support nor oppose any political party or candidate. For more information about the League of Women Voters, access our website at lwvwinnebago.org. Two candidates are competing for mayor for a two-year term. They are Matt Mugrauer and Aaron Mojakowski. Both are current members of the Oshkosh City Council. The incumbent mayor, Lori Palmieri, is not seeking re-election. Joining me on the panel is Karen Schneider, publisher of the Oshkosh Herald. Public questions were solicited in advance. Those of you in the audience may also submit questions on the cards provided. Just wave them in the air and a league member will take them. Questions may be edited for brevity and clarity, and while we hope to cover as many as we can, we may not have time for all. Candidates, please keep your answers concise so we may cover as many issues as possible. Our timekeeper will give you cues. Please heed the stop sign so that I don't have to stop you. This is not a debate. You will each be given the same amount of time for the same question. At the conclusion of this forum, I will offer you each an opportunity to make a final statement. So with that, let's begin with the opening statements. You now have 2 minutes to summarize your background, qualifications, and your motivation for seeking election to the post of mayor. Why should voters choose you over your opponent? And we'll go alphabetically, so we'll start with you, Matt.
Thank you, Margie. First, good evening. Thank you to the League for hosting this event. It's great to be back in person and getting a chance to speak directly to the voters. It's been a long couple of years through COVID of not having these opportunities, so it's very much appreciated. Currently, I'm in my third term as a council member here in the city of Oshkosh, having been elected in 2018 and then subsequently re-elected in 2020 and 22. And I'm the current deputy mayor, having served in that role for the last 2 years. I chair the city's long-range finance committee, and I've previously served on many boards and commissions within the city. I'm also a member of the Oshkosh Mid-Morning Kiwanis, a group that I've connected with through their global purpose of changing the world one child at a time, one child in one community at a time. And I also volunteer quite a bit as a youth sports coach. I, like many parents, I want better for my children than I had. So having been born here in Oshkosh, growing up here, going to public schools, meeting my wife, raising our 3 kids here, I want this great place that I call home to be better for them than I had. I want to continue to make Oshkosh a great place to live, work, and play. And as a lifelong resident of Oshkosh, I've seen where we were at times. I look back, I look at where we are today, and I'm so thankful for how far we've come, and I know that tomorrow and the next day will be even better. Over my first 5 years on council, I've brought a common sense, moderate, reasonable and responsible voice to council, having worked hard for all taxpayers and residents. And as mayor, I'll continue to do just that. Be the common sense, moderate, responsible leader the common council and the city deserves. I'm running for mayor because there is so much great work left to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Aaron, it's your turn.
Well, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, to my colleague for being here today, and to the voters who are participating in this election. My name is Aaron Wojciechowski, and I'm running to continue representing the city that I love and call home, Oshkosh. This community has really given me so much since I've moved here, and I've chosen to give back through service. And that's why for the last 7 years or so, I've dedicated myself to serving the people of Oshkosh, first on the Winnebago County Board for 4 years, as an educator for the Oshkosh Area School District, and now serving on the Oshkosh City Council, where I get to serve on the Sustainability Advisory Board and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So all that experience has just really given me a fuller understanding of our city, its needs, and its areas for improvement. But it's also equipped me with the knowledge to help facilitate that change and collaboration to help Oshkosh keep moving forward. But I also believe that experience alone is not enough. And that's why I believe that, my voting record, my values and passion, my cultural competency, and the way I lead with empathy are just a couple other reasons and qualifications that make me the best choice to be the next mayor of Oshkosh. So if elected, I hope to continue the work that I started when I first joined council, which really focused on economic development and innovation, sustainability efforts, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, and so on. And I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to accomplish over these last 2 years, but I really want to be around to see it continue, and I want to make sure that we're having those tough conversations. As mayor, I would hope to bring organization and leadership to help kind of facilitate that collaboration and create a space where people feel welcome, where their voices are heard, and where they feel like they have a seat at the table. So in conclusion, I just really want to say thank you to the people of Oshkosh for placing your trust in me these last 7 or so years. I'm asking for your support again and for your vote on April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Now we will ask the public policy questions that have been either submitted in advance or by the public tonight at the forum. Remember, if you need a question, just to wave, and a representative will bring you one, and then they'll pick them up and take the questions back too. You will each have 1 minute to respond to each question that we ask, and we're going to start with you, Matt, and Karen has a question for you.
Okay. Now, I've been doing this forum for a while, and this is the most submitted questions I have ever seen. So we definitely have an engaged audience going on here this year. And we're going to start with the basic one, since it's the mayor position. And what do you see as the mayor's role beyond that as a council member who presides at meetings? What are the mayor's responsibilities and powers? And should the mayor be given any added authority? And if so, for what?
No, good question. So the role of the mayor, you outlined it very basically. You know, you have the ability to appoint citizens to our boards and commissions, subject to council approval, and then preside over the meetings, and doing so, you know, in a responsible and respectful fashion. That's what I'll do as mayor. Beyond that, there is no other added responsibility, nor should there be. You are one of 7. And it takes 7 council members, 7 elected individuals to come together to get things done in this community, and that's exactly the way it should be. There's nothing more that the mayor should have, or that they should be, thinking that they should have. It's a very basic role in terms of, leading the council and making sure that everyone's had a chance to be heard during meetings and during forums. But beyond that, those are the essential functions.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing. I would echo that the mayor, provides that steady leadership, facilitates the meetings, and, keeps things in order. I don't think that any additional responsibilities need to be added. I think one thing I really like about Oshkosh that makes us unique to some other communities is that we are city manager style, that we put someone who knows what they're doing in the position, who, has the experience and the knowledge to run a city, and we work with that individual to make sure that the city is operating correctly. So I'm a big fan of that model, but as the role of mayor, I think it's just to facilitate the meetings and bring that leadership.
Thank you, Aaron. You did manage to segue into our next question, so thank you for that. There is a little bit more to it. Do you support the council manager form of government? Do you support our current at-large election of city council members? And we'll start with you, Aaron. You've already answered half of it.
Well, it's a fun question, and I wish our colleague Matt Ford was here because he would have a lot to say about that. But I do like the city manager style of government. I think that it takes an expert, someone who's gone to school, who's got their degree, worked in this field to be able to run an entire city. I mean, it's a large budget with a lot of people to operate. Counter to the county, who is an elected position. I'm a fan of us having a city manager, but having sort of a board of directors, per se, city council, to oversee their actions and still have that accountability measure. As for the at-large versus the districts, I kind of go back and forth. I see value in both. I like having the responsibility of being able to represent the whole city and all their needs, not just a specific district, because I think that leads to inner conflict. So I like the system we have now compared to other cities.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
No, our current form of government, I think, is the best form of local government. We have a professional city manager that is well-trained, well-educated on how to lead appropriately and how to lead a massive organization with, $100+ million budget and, upwards of 500 employees. And government doesn't do well with change. And so having consistent and constant professionalism in that office is of utmost importance. We've seen that in many of our surrounding communities that have partisan politicians that get elected to be the chief executive, and those communities they take a step back every time there's a change in leadership. So in terms of our form of government and the council members at large, I think it's the best thing as well. Districts tend to lead to only looking out for those that fall within that district. We find that on the county board a little bit, where the north doesn't necessarily care too much about the south and vice versa at times. And so it can lead to animosity, and it can lead to development not occurring.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so am I going back to Matt?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to follow along those lines, and in the current political climate, it can get rather testy. So with Oshkosh being the mayor position is a nonpartisan position, what does nonpartisan mean to you?
No, good question. Nonpartisan means that I'm doing the best I can for all 67,000 people that call Oshkosh home. Not the ones who voted for me, not the ones who I agree with politically, not the ones who are, funding a campaign or helping me get elected. This is about 67,000 residents, taxpayers, and doing everything you possibly can to advocate on the behalf of everyone in this community. We've seen over the past couple of years a tipping point to the partisanship at times on this council, and it can be very frustrating. It can be unprofessional at times, and it's important that we stay above that. That it's a reminder that all 7 of us up here are here on the behalf of everyone in this community, trying to do the best we possibly can for the right reasons. And that's how I will try to keep maintaining the nonpartisanship if mayor.
Thank you, Matt. And Aaron, what does nonpartisanship mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. It's really doing what's best, for the city, and, leading through your values and what those values mean. And, what I want to do is, what I want to do, not because someone is telling me to do that or paying me to do anything like that. As someone who has ran for both partisan and nonpartisan, there's a reason why I like nonpartisan. It's because things actually get done. You can have, I found that being in local government, one of the best things is you can have those conversations with people who disagree with you politically, because it's nonpartisan office. I feel like the partisanship gets in the way of having those conversations or even getting progress. So for me, it's really just about doing what's best for the city, following what I believe in and my values, and not, letting the partisan noise get in the way.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Aaron, I'm going to ask you a question right away. According to the city's Housing Needs Assessment and Strategy Plan approved in 2022, about 42% of renters in the city pay more than 30% of their income for rent. I know you're both well aware of this. What is the council's role in addressing the need for affordable housing in Oshkosh? Are there any policies or initiatives you would support to address this issue?
Yeah, so probably as one of those people who fall in that category. No, I understand what it's like having to, housing is a huge cost. I think council's role is, getting creative with our solutions and how we address it. I think the plan was the first step in this large overarching goal that is to address housing. One of the things that we actually just supported last night was giving ARPA funds to the Tiny Houses Project, which I was a big fan of. I think the end goal is to solicit these projects and how to create affordable housing and bringing down the market. But right now, we've seen a very challenging market for people to buy houses. I think some other programs that we've had are, I can't remember the name of the program, but it helps people who are first-time home buyers. And as someone who's looked at that program, it's programs like that that really help people get on their feet and get to those housing solutions.
Thank you. Matt?
Well, thank you. No, so addressing low-income housing and the lack of available housing for those with a low income it's been a tough struggle and a good challenge over the last several years for this community. Unfortunately, not one single person up here has the magic bullet, the crystal ball. Our job is to create an environment that's welcoming to development and redevelopment. That's the first part of this. And we do that by making sure our codes and our ordinances are in place that allow for unique and current trends to be accepted, creating smaller units when possible. But really, it's about creating an environment that makes it accessible for development and redevelopment. And second to that is it's also about attracting business to this community, making sure that we are attractive to businesses to stay here and want to come here so that we can have better, higher paying jobs. that we can support then, the cost of living in this community. Oshkosh is actually quite unique. We have the lowest cost of living in the valley, in fact, in the state. We're very, very low-cost living, yet we routinely run out of low-cost housing, and it's very difficult to try to figure out, how do we move forward?
Thank you.
So I'm going to combine a couple questions I have, and I know it's only a minute, so please do your best. I was actually on the dashboard earlier before this, looking at the TIF districts and what goes out from the city in TIF versus the developer's investment. So do you support the use of tax incremental financing districts in redevelopment and industrial projects? And I'm going to piggyback on that. And would you support accessibility requirements for new developments as part of the TIF policies? And would you also support requiring a certain number of low-income units as a condition of developer TIFs?
The longest run-on sentence I've had.
I'm sorry.
I've heard, no, I'm just kidding. Great question. TIFs are an important economic tool. It is the sole best tool that council and city government has to attract and retain development, redevelopment, as well as employment. And so a huge supporter of the TIF process, the TIFs that we have done, as well as, on my time here on council, been huge supporters of those. In terms of making requirements, making, set-asides for, certain low-income units or just certain set-asides, it's a slippery slope. Because all that does, it drives up our costs through that TIF. It reduces the amount of amount of tax revenue that we get to bring in. And so it's a very slippery slope, and it's difficult. We've had those discussions at council at times and trying to figure out, is it economically right to try to request that? And we'll continue to balance that. Right now, we haven't had one that's come across that that's right to try to do that. If there's one that comes across our desk that's that all the financials work on, it's something for us to absolutely consider, and I'll give it a fair shake. Right now, we haven't done one, and I've supported that.
Thank you. Aaron, did you need me to read?
No, that's
Okay.
great. Yes, to the first part, yes, I do support, and actually, it's one of those things that I wish we as a council or as a city, did a better job of explaining to the public like what a TIF is, because, as someone who had no knowledge on that, I learned by being on council, and I'm glad I learned it, because, it's a great tool for economic development. There are times when we need to be cautious in these TIF deals, because sometimes, we can get taken advantage of, but I think that's, the great responsibility that we have as a council working with the city to make sure that we are making the best deals. But I do agree that, putting too many restrictions on development or restrictions can end up having a negative result. I think where we can do is, encourage those things, share our values. These development projects are coming to our city for a reason, because maybe they share the same values we have, or they understand the importance of them. So I think it's more about encouraging and pushing them towards that direction. I'd also like to see, green technology hopefully more intertwined into these new deals.
Okay, thank you. Civic engagement. It's an important element to a thriving community. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process? And we'll go to you first, Aaron.
Yeah, so I think the first part is meeting people where they are. I think expecting people to show up to your meetings, it's not a great way to get people in the door, give them a seat at the table. So really, I think one of the big things about being an elected official outside of your business responsibilities, being at your meetings, is being in the community, as much as you can, and in, a wide variety of areas. So not just, where you're comfortable going, but really stepping outside your comfort zone, those boundaries of where you're used to living, but meeting those communities, going to those different groups and businesses, and encouraging and inviting them to your meetings, and really just being as available as possible to your constituents so they know that there's someone you can talk to.
Thank you. Matt?
The role of council, the role of mayor is to be accessible and then responsive. So in whatever way they're reaching out, telephone, email, they're showing up at a meeting, and you're giving them, your undivided attention. You could be at the grocery store or at a ball game, and you're going to take time away from normal life to interact because you've got another responsibility. And that's what it's about. So just being accessible in any way possible. Aaron is right, wherever you are always, you're always a council member, and somebody recognizes the face and they want to share a concern or a topic, you've got to be willing to lend that ear and interact with them and to be empathetic to the cause and do your best to try to, respond to them and help them along the way. So that's the council's job, as a mayor. The other part is gaining people to sign up and want to volunteer for our boards and commissions. Working on that process already to make sure we've got a good slate of candidates ready to appoint come late May to make sure that, our boards and commissions are fully staffed.
Thank you.
Okay, so as the mayor and a council member, your one employee is the city manager, and the city manager looks out for the rest of the staff. But planning for the future of our city and succession planning, what attributes do you think are important for the next city manager and other administrators? And in that scope of things, would you also support a new city staff position for sustainability?
Who we go
Kind
to
of
first?
group, oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
Oh, you got
So I
it.
kind of grouped those together as well.
No, so, one of the biggest attributes that any leader has to have, and especially in this organization, is strong communication skills. They've got to be able to manage up and down and communicate effectively with their, in this case, it's a board of directors. The 7 of us are the board of directors. So he's got to be able to manage up and then communicate down effectively, and that's the biggest and best attribute that a chief executive can have for this community. In regards to, I think it was sustainability position within the city government, we've had this discussion in the last couple of years. It hasn't gained a lot of traction yet, and part of that is because I think there's a lot of ambiguity. There hasn't been a whole lot of detail in terms of, what would this person provide? How do we measure their success? And how do we make sure that it's an effective use of tax dollars? And that's what I try to do every time we have a vote, every time we have a budget approval. It's about, how do we get the best use out of our dollars? And so at this point, we haven't had that silver bullet, that right thing to pull the trigger on yet for that position.
Thank you. And Aaron?
Yeah, so I think experience matters. I think we need someone who has experience running a city, whether it's, as a deputy city manager, has that internal knowledge, because it's a lot. It's not just something you can pick up on day one, but it really does take someone with leadership. I think someone with passion, with empathy, who can, like Matt said, communicate to the departments, but also, the city manager is really someone who interacts with the citizens a lot. It's almost as if they're like an elected position, how people communicate with them. But it's about being organized. It's about having that passion and empathy to be able to lead an entire city, really. In terms of the sustainability, yes, I do support it. As the council liaison to the sustainability committee, we've worked these last 2 years to get that there. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, for various reasons. But I don't think that's a reason to stop. And, this is a topic that we could talk a lot about on. But I do see a lot of value in adding that position to the city.
Thanks. Okay, well, kind of piggybacking on that, how should Oshkosh respond to the increasing racial and ethnic diversity in our community? Would you support a new city staff position for diversity and inclusion? And we'll start with you, Aaron.
Yes, I would, and I'm also on the DEI committee, so this has been, the overarching goal and challenge of not just the committee to take on, but not just the city council, but our entire community to tackle. There's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen between us, between the school board, between the county, everyone to work together to find a solution, but I'm proud to say that the DEI committee has submitted their strategic plan to start educating, to start, getting more visibility out there, to start bringing people together. So, there's a lot to come, but I think it starts with that committee really pushing, the issue forward. But I think a position would help address some of those issues that aren't being addressed right now.
Thank you. Matt?
We've been waiting a little bit for DEI's recommendations, so I'm interested and glad to hear that they're going to be coming to us shortly. I want to hear, the nuts and bolts of what they're going to do and how they're going to be effective at it. And I'm very interested in hearing that and open to the discussion. We've had that this last council budget session, and looking forward to that again.
Okay.
Okay, so this goes back to you, Matt. The downtown audit that was recently conducted by Levine Analysts recommended a zone audit. This is a submitted question, and according to the submitter, the code books have redundancies and in many cases have antiquated code. And I'm saying it's submitted because I don't know, okay? What is your appetite for cleaning up the zoning and the codes?
No, it's something that planning has to continuously go through, and I'm all in favor of that. It's got to be relevant to the time. There's so many things that could have been passed 10 or 20 years ago that at the time was right, but maybe now it's not. And there's better and newer ways of doing things, and there's better and generally accepted ways of zoning and building within our our community. So consistent reevaluation of those things, making sure it's relevant, making sure it's accessible for development and redevelopment, that we are inviting and enticing to those who want to come here and stay here. Absolutely in support of that.
Yeah, same. I think, anything we can do to try to make it, easier for businesses, especially on the main street to thrive. Even just the low-hanging fruit, little things, like decorations out in front of their businesses, things like that, like, it adds up after a while, and I think they appreciate it. We had the downtown study that was conducted that gave us a whole list of, ideas and changes that we can make to improve our downtown area. And I think a lot of that does start with taking a look at those codes, being innovative in how we approach this. So I'd like to see us, take a look at that. There's obviously a lot to look through, and that's why we have a zoning committee to kind of tackle that. But, when it comes to council, it's something that I'm in favor of.
Okay, thank you. Funding special assessments, that remains an unresolved issue. What policy do you support, Aaron?
Yeah, this has been going on for a while. So when I first ran for council, this was a big question, and one of the position I took was in favor of the whatever tax it was, the special tax. But one thing you learn when you get in an elected body is like how to be realistic about taking this approach. So over these 2 years, as we've had these conversations, we've learned that going in that direction, is not a viable option immediately due to restrictions on the state. So unfortunately, we're at the drawing board again, and, this is one of the goals that we've, really asked our city manager to take on. But, unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with the state restricting us on what we can do. And it's unfortunate to those who are paying those high prices, but, I don't have the answer right now to see it change. That's why we have a collaborative body. But I'm hoping we can find some solution to address it.
Matt?
Our current system is very antiquated. It's out of date, and it needs updating. That I know 7 people agree on, but it's the how do we get there? What do we do next? And how do we make sure it's fair and reasonable and equitable for everybody after that? So right now, we routinely burden a few dozen very unlucky property owners annually with massive special assessments to make sure that the roads in front of their properties, are improved. It's unfair. We all benefit from a well-maintained transportation system, and there's got to be a better way, whether it's some sort of fee, whether it's, as part of the tax levy. There has to be a better way going forward in 2023. And I'm happy that we've given City Manager Roloff an additional goal this year to come back to us with some new and improved ideas for us to consider.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to start with you. So there's many citizens who feel that they need to do a public song and dance to get the attention of the council, to listen to the issues that they bring forward. Now, over the last year, there's been a few that there's basically been a public song and dance to garner attention to that issue. So what advice would you give a normal citizen that believes that there's an issue that needs to be addressed without them having to dance to get your attention?
Sure. When approached, the best thing that I think someone can do is come here on a Tuesday night of a council meeting and stand in front of us and make us listen to them. An email is easy to disregard, I'm going to be honest. A letter is too, and sometimes a phone call as well. We saw it during Zoom, we saw it during COVID, when council meetings and county board meetings and school board meetings were all virtual. There's this distance between us, and it's easy to be distracted, and it's easy to not be engaged. You want to get my attention really easy, you want to make sure you get the other 6 people that sit up here. You've got to come in front of us, and you've got to tell us, what the issue is and tell us,
Thank you,
what
Matt.
we need to do. Are we only down to 30 now?
No, you were holding up the stop sign.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I think obviously coming to the meetings is a great way, and anytime someone has emailed me or called, my first response is, please come to the meeting, one, so it's out in public, so we can acknowledge it and other people can see it, but, I appreciate calls, I appreciate the emails, or people coming up in public and talking to it, but I also think it's just, trying to be informed with what's happening in the city within these various groups, whether that's like paying attention on social media or just going to these different groups and meetings to just be aware of what's happening. It's a big city and it's hard for us to know everything that's going on, but that's why you go out in the community and you discover what's happening, you talk to people, and try to come to a solution. But one of the best ways, yes, is to come to this meeting and share your thoughts with us.
Okay, thank you. The city council did not provide any levy increase to the library in its last budget. The result is the library must cut over $80,000 from its budget. Do you support providing the library with an increase in funds next year? And we'll start with you, Aaron.
I feel like that's not a simple question to say yes or no to. I mean, this last budget session that we just had was very tough, and the library wasn't the only, cut or decision that we had to make. We had probably around 20 or so additional requests, and with increasing costs of, health insurance, with our water rates increasing, we need to tighten our budget a little bit. And as unfortunate as that is, I support the library. We need to start getting innovative with how we're using the resources that we have, or how we bring in additional funding that doesn't require, additional taxes or fees on people. So it is a tough challenge, and I hope that, when we're in a good economy, when, we're doing well, we're getting a surplus, that we can go back and, give that support that's needed.
This one's a little close to my heart. I happen to know a library trustee pretty well. Not an easy thing for us to not give that additional funding that they were looking for. It's tough. We passed a 4% levy increase on to the residents of Oshkosh. Keep in mind, council has the ability to pass on any levy increase they would like. That's a slippery slope, and it's very scary. It's tough decisions when we're in the conference room and up here when it comes time for budget, because every decision we make has an impact on every resident of Oshkosh, every taxpayer. I'm a huge supporter of the library. I was one of myself and former council member Deb Allison Osby. We pushed hard to get that building open during COVID to make sure it was accessible for those who needed it most, for those who needed shelter. So a huge supporter of them. I'm hopeful that the next budget cycle that they come with the information that we'd like to hear from them, and that we're able to support their budget request.
You get
Is this
to
the
ask
last question? This is hard because I have 6 of them I want to ask.
A really long run-on sentence.
I'm very good at those. All right, so we'll go it this way because you've both been on council the last 2 years. So Matt, in your opinion, what policy decisions made by the mayor and council over the last 2 years have been good for the city and its residents? And then if there are any policy decisions that you believe were wrong, can you explain that?
Oh, interesting question. Some of the best policy decisions we've made, in my opinion, are from the financial side. Anything we want to do, we have to figure out how to fund it. So at its core, if we are in a bad financial position, or we have too much debt, or we're levied to the max, we can't do those new things. And so everything that we want to do up here revolves around the almighty dollar. We've passed some very good financial policies. We made some good decisions at my suggesting this last year. We took on some additional debt in advance, and looking at the market, we saw maybe that we could save the taxpayers a ton of money. It's looking like that may come to fruition, that we made a good decision in advance, and we're talking possibly 7 figures in tax savings. So it's about doing those things. In terms of bad policies, I don't think so. We have good discussions up here on Tuesday nights, and we may disagree on the how and the why, but once it's decided, we come together and we make sure that we do what's best for Oshkosh. So I'm supportive of what we've been doing the last 2 years.
Thank you. And Aaron?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that comes to mind was the policy that was created and passed by council on how we dispersed ARPA funds. we were one of the leading cities in the state that, created a policy with how we dispersed those funds. We wanted to be responsible with them over around the 4 years that we had to use those funds. And I'm very proud of the projects that we have funded as a result of that policy to make sure it's not just all spent right away, because we need to be responsible with it because it was a one-time amount of money that we were given. In terms of policies, I haven't seen any right now that have come to me that, I'm mad that we passed or think have had a negative effect on us. The great thing that I've noticed with our council is, rarely do we disagree like contentiously on a lot of things. It's been, we have good discussion and we come to, for the most part, a good consensus on most of our policies.
Okay. We are now going to go to our final question, which there is no question. You just get a whole minute to say whatever you would like. And we'll start with you, Aaron.
Oh, fantastic. Well, once again, thank you for the questions. Thank you to those who submitted questions. I really appreciate being able to be up here to talk about this. I really love Oshkosh, and I just want to continue being a part of that change to make it better, whether that is as mayor, if elected, or just as a citizen, coming to these meetings and trying to make a big difference. I really believe that I do have that experience despite being the younger person, but having that experience, having that empathy, being able to lead with passion, and I have some great things that I want to accomplish. I think we've made some huge progress in our sustainability and diversity areas. Like 2 of our 5 city manager goals are now that, and we've never even really touched sustainability in Oshkosh. So, I want to be a part of that, and I'm, again, asking for your support and your vote on April 4th. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Well, first, thank you to the league again for hosting this forum. Much appreciated that we had the chance to interact and as well as just speak directly to the voters. Thank you to Aaron to come in tonight. And we've got so many great things going on in Oshkosh. There's been so much great momentum over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I want to see that continue. Oshkosh needs to be a place that is great to live, work, and play. And over my last 5 years in council, as I stated at the beginning, brought a common sense, moderate, responsible voice to council. It's exactly what I'll do when mayor. And it's about working hard for all residents, which is exactly what I've done over the last 5 years as well. So I appreciate the time tonight, and I hope for their support on April 4th.
Okay, well, thank you. This concludes the forum for the Oshkosh mayor. On Tuesday, April 4th, you may vote for one of these candidates, Matt Mugerauer or Aaron Wojciechowski. The polls are open from 7 to 8 p.m. Everyone must show a voter ID. You may register when you go to vote on Election Day if you take a proof of residence with you. You can go to myvote.wi.gov to find information on registration, ballots, acceptable photo IDs, and polling places. Go to vote411.org to learn more about the candidates. You may also consider voting early or absentee. Contact the city clerk for more information. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Winnebago County, I want to thank everyone for participating in this forum. Remember, our democracy depends on citizen involvement. Please vote on April 4th. And now, after a brief break, we will resume with the Oshkosh City Council Forum.